My childhood friend, Carter, moved with his family to a rural town in Michigan, but we always kept in touch. His family is very into country life, and I would dare say they are a bit hillbilly, so the move was not a surprise. Carter's family loves me, and I am always welcome to visit. Now, we are 19 years old, I am in college, and Carter works for his dad. They have a huge property, and I had visited before. This wouldn't be my first time there. It was a fall weekend, and I planned to stay at Carter's family's house. His mother and sister wouldn't be there that weekend. It would just be him and his dad. The trip took about 4.5 hours, passing by many farms and open fields. To get to their property, we had to take a gravel road that stretched about 300 meters from the main road. When I arrived, I was warmly welcomed by both Carter and his dad, who were already in the backyard having beers. After bringing my bag from the car, I joined them. Carter started telling me about all the trails in the area where we could go off-roading with my Toyota 4Runner. I had never done off-roading before, but I was super excited. Carter's dad grilled some burgers for us, and then went to visit a friend. Carter and I got into my car, and he guided me to a nearby trail that he described as perfect for off-roading. It was already about 6 in the evening, so we only had a few hours of daylight left. We did about an hour of off-roading on various trails not far from Carter's house. When it started getting dark, we decided to leave the trails and head back to the road because it got even darker in the middle of the forest. While we were driving around, passing by various farms, we spotted an abandoned building that looked like a church, with a huge cornfield next to it. Carter said he passed by that place all the time, but had never checked it out. We agreed to go back and take a look later, but Carter suggested we go by bike. His family had a bunch of trail bikes fully equipped with lights and everything. We went back to his house, where Carter grabbed a backpack and put in some tequila along with a few flashlights. We took the 2 best bikes they had, each equipped with lights mounted on the handlebars. He said it would probably be a 20-minute bike ride. Both of us are pretty active and have played sports since high school, so I didn't mind a long bike ride. When we arrived at the abandoned building, it was already quite dark. That's why we brought flashlights. The night was cold, and the full moon illuminated the cornfield next to the church. We checked for any cars before entering the property, just to be safe. We hid our bikes a bit in the cornfield so they wouldn't be seen. There was still enough light outside to navigate without turning on the flashlights. We didn't want to draw attention to ourselves. We were thinking of taking some cool and artsy pictures of each other for Instagram inside the building if we could find a way in. The place was definitely an old church. The shape of the windows confirmed that. We went to look through one of the windows, but it was too dark to see inside. I asked Carter to pass me a flashlight. When we turned on the flashlight, the difference was noticeable. Now we could see inside. We both noticed something strange on the pews. It looked like a person's head bent down, sitting with their back to us. Carter said it looked like a mannequin, especially because it was completely still. We made a friendly bet, with Carter betting it was a mannequin and me betting it was some drunk homeless person. We went to the front door of the place and saw it was sealed shut. Carter shook the door just for fun, but it didn't budge. This implied he won the bet because there was no way a homeless person could get in there. I said, wait, let's check the other windows for a closer view. So, we walked around the church to the window we knew had the best angle of whatever we had seen inside. But now, when I shined the flashlight through the glass, whatever had been on that pew a few minutes ago was gone. I told Carter he owed me money because I was right that it was a homeless person. Although it was also scary, he asked where the person went. So, I shined the flashlight in all directions until we both saw it at the same time and jumped. The man was standing just to the left of the window inside, looking at us. However, he didn't look homeless to me. We ran back to the cornfield, trying to find the bikes in a panic, but couldn't. It was so dark that we avoided turning on the flashlights to not expose ourselves. We heard the sound of a door slamming in the church building. It sounded like some sort of interior door. Carter told me to be quiet because he heard sounds in the cornfield, like someone moving through the stalks. Then everything stopped and it was silent, a total silence. No breeze at all the plants were still. We stood still, crouched, afraid to move. We stayed in that position for a solid minute before Carter whispered, "Which way did we leave the bikes?" That's when we heard the sound of the stalks a few meters from us being pushed aside, as if someone was running towards us. I shouted, "Let's get out of here." We ran together through the plants, some of them hitting my face. At some point, we broke into the open, leaving the cornfield and running back to the road. We were no longer being chased. Carter immediately called his dad, who came to pick us up. He wasn't the type of dad to get mad at us for trespassing or drinking. He was more upset about the bikes, but said we did the right thing by leaving them and running. The next day, he took us back to that church, bringing a gun with him. We searched the plants until we found the bikes, and put them in the back of Carter's dad's truck. We were about to leave when we looked back at the church and saw someone in one of the windows. It had to be the same person, I think. When he saw us notice him, he backed away from the window in a creepy way. Carter's dad said, "Let's get out of here." It was genuinely disturbing to see Carter's dad, a tough guy, scared. After that, we went to a barbecue restaurant, ate a lot, and drank a bit. Carter's dad called a number in town to inform them that someone was hiding in that abandoned building. At least we felt like we did something by bringing it to their attention. Who knows if that man is still hiding in that church or who he really was. It was early October when the farm was silent, except for the soft sound of the wind rustling the leaves. Joe and his wife had left town to handle some business, and I was alone taking care of the property. The off-season was a difficult time for me, as I spent a lot of time alone. Since my fiancée's death, I hadn't opened up to a new relationship, and loneliness was a constant companion. That specific night, the windows of the house were open to let in the cool October breeze. I was sitting in my recliner, reading a book, when a sharp scream pierced the air. The sound was so shrill and unexpected that it made my blood run cold. I couldn't tell if it was a teenage girl or an adult woman, but the intensity of the scream made me jump out of my chair. I ran to my bedroom and opened the safe where I keep my rifle. I grabbed the gun and went out to the front porch, trying to figure out where the scream was coming from. The air was cold and refreshing, contrasting with the growing tension inside me. Then, I heard the scream again, clearer this time. It was coming from the cornfield. I fired a shot into the air, hoping to scare off any intruders or attract the attention of someone in trouble. Immediately after the shot, I heard a woman's voice screaming for help. The silence that followed was even more disturbing. I turned on all the outside lights of the house and grabbed my cell phone, dialing 911 as I walked towards the cornfield. I explained to the operator what I had heard, and he assured me that officers would be sent immediately. The cornfield looked even more sinister under the dim light of the flashlights. The tall stalks created shadows that danced with the wind, increasing the sense of unease. The police arrived quickly, and together we began the search. There were 4 officers, all visibly alert and concerned. We walked through the cornfield, illuminating the path with our flashlights and calling out to anyone who might need help. The wind continued to blow, making the corn stalks move in an almost spectral manner. However, despite our efforts, we found no one. One of the officers, a sturdy man with a serious expression, advised me to call again if I heard anything else. They left, leaving me with a sense of unease and growing fear. I went back inside the house, still nervous, and shut the door tightly. I turned off all the lights and tried to convince myself that maybe it was just a prank by local teenagers. After another hour of watching TV, I decided to go to bed. I took some medication to help me sleep, but sleep did not come easily. I was lying down, almost dozing off, when I heard creaks and bangs downstairs. My heart raced as I realized I had left the windows open. The sound traveled easily through the thin walls of the house, and the wooden floors creaked with every step. I grabbed my cell phone and called my brother. He answered, and I whispered, asking if he was home. He said no, and at that moment, every hair on my body stood on end. I told him that someone was in the house and asked him to call the police. I took my shotgun from the safe, trying to make as little noise as possible. I approached my bedroom door and looked down the stairs. The wind was still blowing through the house, but there was another sound: footsteps on the wooden floor, approaching the stairs. A tall, thin figure appeared at the bottom of the steps. I cocked the shotgun and yelled for him to stay still, but he didn't listen. Calmly, he walked out of sight, and then his steps turned into a run. I ran after him, but as soon as he went out the back door, I locked all the entrances and called my brother again. He said the police were on their way. The same officers returned and conducted another search of the property's perimeter. One of them offered to stay on watch during the night, but I knew the intruder wouldn't come back after seeing I was armed. Days later, while working the harvest, I saw something unusual in the field. I stopped the combine and got down to pick up the object. It was a woman's shoe, size 7. It reminded me of the screams I heard the night of the break-in. I called 911 again and left the shoe where it was, so as not to compromise any evidence. When the police arrived, they brought in sniffer dogs to search for any clues. Strangely, there were no reports of missing women in our area, at least not at that time. The sight of that abandoned shoe left me unsettled. To this day, I feel bad thinking that someone might have been hurt or even killed on my farm, and that maybe I couldn't help in time. The investigation dragged on for weeks, with no concrete leads. The police conducted several searches on the farm, questioned neighbors, and even placed ads in local newspapers, hoping to find someone who knew the owner of the shoe. But no one came forward, and the mystery remained. I tried to move on with my life, but the feeling that something terrible had happened on my property wouldn't leave me in peace. Every night, before bed, I checked the doors and windows, ensuring they were locked. The sound of the wind blowing through the cornfields became a constant reminder of that night. My mind was tormented by recurring nightmares. In one of them, I was in the cornfield, surrounded by whispering voices and shadows moving quickly around me. I heard the woman scream, getting louder and louder until it became unbearable. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. I decided to seek professional help and started seeing a therapist. He helped me process the trauma and deal with the anxiety. But even with professional support, there were still nights when the feeling of fear was overwhelming. My sister, who lived in another city, came to visit me after hearing about what had happened. She has always been a practical and rational person, and her presence brought me some comfort. We spent days talking about what happened, trying to find some logic in the chaos. She suggested that I install security cameras around the property, and I agreed immediately. The cameras were installed in strategic locations, covering all the entrances and the area around the house. Now, I could monitor any suspicious activity without leaving the house. While this brought some sense of security, there was still a part of me that couldn't shake off the fear. A few weeks after the cameras were installed, while reviewing the recordings, I noticed something strange. There was a shadowy figure moving around the cornfield. The image quality wasn't good enough to identify the person, but it was clear that someone was prowling the property at night. I took the recordings to the police, and they increased surveillance in the area. Although the police presence was reassuring, I still felt vulnerable. The figure in the recordings seemed to know exactly where the cameras were, avoiding being captured in detail. One night, I woke up to a strange sound coming from downstairs. It was a low, rhythmic sound, like someone was walking through the house with deliberate steps. I grabbed my shotgun and went down the stairs, trying to make as little noise as possible. When I reached the ground floor, I saw a shadow moving in the kitchen. The figure had his back to me, fiddling with something on the counter. I felt a surge of adrenaline and shouted for the person to turn around. He turned slowly, and I could see his face in the faint moonlight coming through the window. He was a thin man with dark eyes and a disturbing smile. He didn't say a word, just stared at me for a few seconds before running out the back door. I was paralyzed for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The next day, while cleaning the kitchen, I found a small notebook the intruder had left behind. It was a diary, full of disturbing notes and drawings. There were detailed descriptions of observations made on my farm, as if he had been watching me for a long time. I took the diary to the police, who began analyzing the information. They discovered that the man was a known criminal, wanted for several burglaries and home invasions in the area. The revelation brought a mix of relief and terror. At least now we knew who he was, but he was still on the loose. With the intruder's identity revealed, the police intensified their search. It was a tense week, with constant patrols around my farm. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, afraid to go outside and find the man out there. Finally, on a rainy night, the police managed to capture him. He was found hiding in an abandoned cabin nearby. When I was called to identify some of the belongings he had, I immediately recognized the shoe I had found in the cornfield. During the interrogation, the man confessed to several crimes but denied harming the woman whose shoe I found. He claimed he found the shoe in the field and left it there to scare me. Although there wasn't enough evidence to directly link him to someone's disappearance, his arrest brought some peace to the community. The following days were a mix of relief and sadness. I still didn't know what really happened to the woman whose scream I heard that night. The farm felt safer, but the sense of loss and mystery still lingered in the air. With time, life on the farm returned to normal. The harvest was completed, and the daily work helped distract my mind from the traumatic events. The security cameras continued to operate, and the occasional police presence gave me a sense of protection. My brother and his wife returned, and it was a relief to have company again. They brought with them a bit of normalcy, and the farm began to feel like a safe place again. However, the nights were still difficult. The sound of the wind through the cornfields would never be the same for me. I decided I needed a fresh start. With my family's support, I began planning a trip to visit some distant friends. I needed to leave the farm for a while, breathe new air, and try to leave behind the fears that still haunted me. The trip was refreshing. I spent weeks visiting new places, meeting people, and rebuilding my confidence. Gradually, the sense of terror was replaced by a new sense of adventure and hope. I realized that life could go on, and that I could find joy and peace again. When I returned to the farm, I was stronger and determined not to let fear control my life. Joe and his wife's presence, and the community's support, were crucial to my recovery. I continued to see my therapist, and the sessions helped me process the events and move forward. The farm continued to thrive, and the following year's harvest was one of the best we'd ever had. The sense of normalcy was finally returning, and I was beginning to feel at peace again. A few months later, I received a call from the police. They had found a body in a wooded area near my farm. The body was in an advanced state of decomposition, but the police suspected it could be the woman whose scream I heard that night. The news was devastating. The feeling that I could have done more to help returned with full force. However, the police assured me that there was nothing I could have done. The case was being treated as a homicide, and the investigation would continue until the culprit was found. I decided to do something in memory of the unknown woman. With the community's help, we built a small memorial in the cornfield where the shoe was found. It was a place to remember and honor her life, even if we didn't know her name. The memorial brought a sense of closure and peace. The farm began to feel complete again, and the community's presence reminded me that I wasn't alone. Life on the farm continued, but now with a new perspective and a renewed respect for the fragility of life. Today, the farm is thriving. I have learned to live with the memories of that night, turning fear into a force that drives me forward. The security cameras are still there, but now they are just part of the daily routine. I continue to care for the farm with the same love and dedication as always. The crops are abundant, and the community is more united than ever. Although the past has left its marks, I am determined to look to the future with hope and optimism. And so, the story of the Night of the Scream has become part of the fabric of my life, a reminder that, even in the darkest nights, the light of hope and community can shine brightly.